Space Industry Indemnities Bill not amended in committee to be considered.
No amendments on consideration. Third reading what day?
Now.
Mr. Jonathan Lord.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that the bill be now read the third time. Clause 1A is the central and crucial clause of this bill, so I shall briefly explain its purpose and why it's necessary. Before a company can operate a satellite in orbit or carry out a launch mission from the UK, it must first obtain a spaceflight operator licence under the Space Industry Act 2018, which I'll refer to as the 2018 Act. The licence process ensures that spaceflight activities are undertaken safely, securely, and in accordance with the UK's international obligations. Under United Nations space treaties, it is the state that is ultimately liable for any damage or injury that may be caused by their space activities, even where undertaken by commercial space operators. The 2018 Act therefore contains provisions to help mitigate potential costs to UK taxpayers arising from UK commercial spaceflight activities. This includes the power to incorporate licence conditions requiring operators to hold insurance, and under Section 36 of the 2018 Act, to indemnify the UK government and other named public bodies against any claims brought against the government or body in respect of damage or loss. It is recognised, however, that placing unlimited liability on commercial space activities would be a barrier to operating in the UK. Other space nations, such as France and the United States, limit liabilities or provide a state guarantee for the launch activities that take place from their territory. Section 12.2 of the 2018 Act currently provides a power to specify in a licence a limit on the amount of the licensee's liability to indemnify under Section 36 of the Act. Current government policy is that the regulator should use these powers to specify a limit on operator liability in the licence so that no operator will face unlimited liability. This policy is set out in guidance, and I understand that all spaceflight operated licences issued under the 2018 Act to date contain a limit on the amount of liability. However, industry have made clear in response to consultation and in other fora that they would welcome legal certainty that they will not face unlimited liability when launching or operating a satellite from the UK. Clause 1A amends Section 12.2 of the 2018 Act by replacing may with must. This will change Section 12.2 from being a discretionary power to a mandatory requirement to specify a limit on the amount of an operator's liability under Section 36 in the licence. Clause 1A is a key regulatory improvement to the 2018 Act that will provide assurance to investors that limits on the amount of an operator's liability to indemnify government and other named bodies will be included in licences. However, the existing provisions in legislation about the circumstances when the limit on the amount of liability does not apply will continue to have effect. Such circumstances include where the operator is liable in gross negligence or willful misconduct, or where damage or loss is caused by the non-compliance by the operator with its licence conditions or the requirements of the 2018 Act or regulations. Clause 1B contains a minor but necessary consequential amendment to Section 36 of the 2018 Act. Overall, this clause meets a key request from the sector. It will also address a recommendation made by the Task Force on Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform. The amendments being made by Clause 1 is consistent with government policy, which is designed to support and grow the UK's commercial space sector. By setting a clear requirement in law for a limit on operator liability in the licence, the amendment made by this clause will provide UK industry and those looking to invest in the UK greater certainty and carry more force than reliance on policy statements and guidance. So as we convene for this third reading of this vital bill, I urge colleagues across the House to consider the profound impact it will have on safeguarding British industrial and business interests in the burgeoning field of space and space flight. This legislation before us seeks to address critical uncertainties surrounding liability and indemnity for our space industry, providing much needed clarity for current and prospective spaceflight operators and investors alike.
Would he give way?
I will.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way and I congratulate him on the bill. It does appear that this will give the UK a real competitive advantage. So could he confirm to me the competitive advantage that he believes this could bring for the UK in the space industry?
I thank my right honourable friend for that intervention, and I can confirm that this bill will set us on a par with the United States and France, who our friends are probably our main competitors in this particular and important arena. The space industry is already worth £17.5 billion a year, and it is estimated that this will add tens of billions over the coming decade or more. So I think my right honourable friend makes a really important point, that this makes us competitive in a way that currently we're not quite there.
Would you give way?
Indeed.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I congratulate him on his the third reading of his bill, which is obviously going to make a huge difference to the space industry. Does he agree with me that it's imperative, as we move through the 21st century, that we encourage more women and girls to consider taking up the skills and the employment opportunities that the space industry does offer? And to date, it has been, sadly, too much of a male focus, and that hopefully if we are going to be passing bills like that really do give the space industry the confidence to expand, that we will be able to encourage more women and girls to consider space industry as a career.
My honourable friend makes an excellent point. This bill will help provide that certainty for our space industry for many years to come, and of course we need all the talent that we can provide in this country, and I completely agree that we want more girls going into science and those sorts of subjects, STEM subjects, and considering a career in this fantastic, relatively recent industry. So this bill, by amending Section 12.2 of the Space Industry Act 2018, firmly establishes in law the imperative that all spaceflight operator licences will have a defined limit on liability. Such clarity not only fulfills a long-standing demand from the sector, but also ensures that our regulatory framework aligns with international standards and best practice. In an era where commercial space activities are poised for the huge growth that I've just mentioned, this legislation is a decisive step towards fostering a competitive and thriving space industry within our shores. And members from Cornwall and from Scotland in particular will know specifically the benefits of that with our new spaceports. By mandating specific liability limits, essentially forming a type of risk sharing between the commercial operator and the government, this will empower businesses to navigate risks prudently while encouraging continued investment in space-related ventures. As a nation, we must seize every opportunity to cultivate an environment where British enterprises can flourish and contribute to the advancement of our economy and our technological prowess. Furthermore, we should acknowledge the collaborative efforts that have shaped this legislation, drawing from insights gleaned through consultations with industry stakeholders and with expert recommendations. This bill reflects a balanced approach that prioritises the interests of both business and the public purse, ensuring that our regulatory framework remains robust, yet adaptable to evolving circumstances. By enshrining these principles in law, we affirm our commitment to fostering a vibrant yet responsible space industry that serves the interests of our nation, its businesses and its citizens. By passing this bill, we not only bolster confidence in our regulation, but also lay the groundwork for a future where British ingenuity propels us to new frontiers of discovery and prosperity. I urge all members to support this bill, recognising its significance in shaping the trajectory of our nation's space industry for decades to come.
Question is that the bill be now read a third time. Opposition from bench. Rodda.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and it is a pleasure to be able to speak today, and may I commend the member for Woking for his bill. As others have said, private companies in the UK need a spaceflight operator's licence as set out in the Space Industry Act 2018, and that is before they can operate from the UK. And I'm pleased to say that we continue to support this Act as a means to ensure safety and compliance, and it is also right that the Act works to limit the extent to which UK taxpayers are liable to pick up the cost of commercial spaceflight. I do recognise the limits to liability and licences, and that the Act allows are key to ensuring the potential economic viability of space activities in the future. And in this spirit, I welcome the move towards legal certainty regarding liability limits when launching or operating satellites from the UK. Mr Deputy Speaker, as we've heard already, the bill seeks to do this by amending the Space Industries Act, legally requiring liability limits in space operators' licences. The clarity and reassurance to investors this would provide is welcome. We want to see a thriving UK space sector and to help our strong space sector businesses fulfil their potential. As a nation, we have a proud history of space exploration and of global collaboration in this important field. This goes back to 1957 when British Skylark rockets were launched from Woomera in Australia. In 1962, the UK partnered with NASA, launching rockets from an Italian base off the coast of Kenya. And at the turn of the millennium, the British National Space Centre was the third largest financial contributor to the European Space Agency. It's also worth noting that pioneering British astronauts such as Helen Sharman and Major Tim Peake have made a significant contribution to space exploration. If we fast forward to today, the UK space sector has a turnover of £17 billion or more, and it employs over 48,000 people in exciting roles, including 2,300 apprenticeships. And I should add that there's a notable space cluster in Surrey, and in my own area in Berkshire, there are significant space businesses, so this affects many of us in our constituencies as well. Space technology, though, is not just for those involved in advanced manufacturing. It is for all of us, whether it comes to combating and measuring climate change, using and deploying rural broadband, to transport and to agriculture. Space is vital for security and resilience. Satellite communications play an important role in communications across the world, including many parts of the world. And space provides opportunities for crucial economic growth, as the Honourable Gentleman mentioned earlier, across the country, whether it's in Cornwall or all the way to Shetland. Indeed, aerospace R&D is a long-term endeavour, and our industrial strengths in the UK are as the result of decades of support by successive governments. We would seek to build on this legacy, and this includes developing spaceports and centres like the North East Space Skills and Technology Centre, which has created over 350 jobs and injected around £260 million into the North East economy. We've also proposed a Regulatory Innovation Office which would support our science, research, innovation and space ventures. Our regulators must be responsive to innovation, from in-orbit manufacturing to space-based renewables. Labour's Regulatory Innovation Office would rewire regulators to support innovation, including the space sector. And indeed, this office would set and monitor targets for approvals, benchmarked internationally, and would give regulators steers from our wider industrial strategy. We'd also support the Regulatory Horizons Council with deadlines for government to respond to their work. Mr Deputy Speaker, I'd like to turn briefly to the importance of broader economic stability in supporting the UK space sector. As well as regulation, industry desperately needs support and stability from government. And I have to say it's somewhat sad that the current government has failed to always offer that stability. If you look at the National Space Council, which was set up by one Prime Minister and sadly cancelled by the next, yet reinstated by the one after that, or the way in which the UK left Galileo, which is a project which is so much to bring about, and then of course the government's subsequent U-turn on a rival system which cost the taxpayer £60 million. The Science and Technology Committee has expressed concerns over the lack of coherence in the current government space strategy, and indeed it said this ambiguity added to harmful speculation through the potential OneWeb and Eurostat merger. The space industry plan was unfortunately 3 months late, and it's unclear how the government sees space relating to key technologies in the science and technology framework. In contrast, Labour's industrial strategy with our Statutory Industrial Strategy Council will provide stability and the partnership the industry needs. Mr Deputy Speaker, I'd also like to turn to skills. When colleagues spoke at the UK Space Conference last year, attendees heard the same concerns, and those were, as were mentioned earlier by some of the members, that we need to raise the profile of space careers to secure the skilled workforce that the industry demands. We're proposing a national skills body, Skills England, to provide leadership and to bring together government, business, training providers and trade unions to meet local skills needs. We want to reform the apprenticeship levy to maximise the opportunities which learners have. And expanding opportunities in the industry should, as was indicated earlier, help to create jobs for people from all backgrounds. If we look at the space park in Leicester, where the university, local government and industry work together to make space more accessible to all, this is indeed an example of the sort of developments we would like to support. We want to see a cross-government action plan for diversity in STEM if we were to enter government. So I'd like to leave the Minister with a few constructive questions, and I hope that he will address my points about stability and set out how the government is due to reassure business that Britain is still a great place to invest in respect to commercial space ventures. Would he also, in his response, agree with me that skills and training are absolutely vital to this sector and that we must provide high-quality jobs from people for all backgrounds? Mr Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, on the whole, we support the Space Indemnities Bill. Adequate licensing will be a key contributor to creating the growth in this important growth in the space sector. However, the space industry lacks stable long-term investment and support from the government, and I look forward to the Minister's response on these matters. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.
I now call the honourable gentleman, the member for South West Hertfordshire, to the dispatch box for his first outing as a Minister of the Crown. Mr Gagan Mohindra.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I firstly thank my honourable friend, the member for Woking, for taking this important bill through the House? And can I applaud him on his excellent speech? Given what the Shadow Minister has already said, I'm pleased to confirm that he has cross-party support for his bill. From the contributions we heard during second reading and in committee, we know how beneficial this bill will be to the many businesses in the UK's thriving space sector. This contributes over £17.5 billion to the UK economy and directly employs more than 48,000 people. This bill supports our government's ambition to make the UK the leading provider of commercial small satellite launch in Europe by 2030. We are harnessing the opportunities provided by launch, and these will meet the aims set out in the National Space Strategy and the government's agenda to level up the UK. It will create skilled jobs around the UK, as well as inspiring the next generation of space professionals. To achieve our ambition, the government has already invested over £57 million through the Launch UK programme to grow new UK markets for small satellite launch and suborbital space flight. Growing our launch capability is already creating highly skilled jobs and opportunities in communities right across the UK, as well as rocket-boosting investment across the supply chain, supporting the government's aims to grow and level up the economy. Of course I will.
thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I think he's making a great speech, and I congratulate him on his introduction to the dispatch box. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that, as I said earlier in the debate, that the space industry is an excellent place for women and girls to consider as an industry? And is there any particular area of the space industry that he would consider important for women and girls to consider?
Can I thank my friend, the Honourable Member for the cities of London, City of London and Westminster. I think I speak on behalf of many colleagues in the House that when I was a child, I aspired to be an astronaut. Fortunately, I was not able to achieve that ambition. And I hope from today's debates that we will inspire the next generation, saying, actually, why can you not be the next Buzz Lightyear or equivalent in the years to come? Because we are at the forefront of what is a cutting-edge industry, and we are world leaders in many parts of this. So I do hope, and I plead for all colleagues whenever they go to their constituencies, technical colleges or universities or schools, to inspire that generation to say, why not? Going back to my speech, we are growing our launch capabilities, already creating highly skilled jobs and opportunities in communities right across the United Kingdom, as well as rocket boosting investment across the supply chain, supporting government's aim to grow and level up the economy. The government recognises that the question of liability and insurance is of utmost concern to the space sector. Industry has made it clear that holding unlimited liabilities could have adverse effect on the UK spaceflight industry. If a spaceflight operator's liability was not limited, spaceflight companies and investors might move to other jurisdictions which have more favourable liability regimes. Of course, well.
I did congratulate him on his debut at the dispatch box. I must just anecdotally mention that when I was first elected, we actually had a visit from a space shuttle crew, and having real spacemen in Parliament was terribly exciting. But I want to press him on a procedural point. He may know that the Procedure Committee is looking into territorial constitution and the way that the extent of bills that go beyond the scope of just Westminster and England and Wales, and how we make sure we speak to our parliamentary colleagues in devolved and other parliaments. I note the extent of this bill is the whole UK, the Channel Islands, Isle of Man and overseas territories. So I wonder if he could perhaps, and he's welcome to write to me about this, if he could set out what work the government has done to make sure that parliaments around the United Kingdom and others affected know about this bill, and whether we'll be looking to get any legislative consent motions.
Great question.
I thank my right honourable friend for that intervention. With her permission, I will make sure that myself or another minister writes to her. But she correctly points out that the Shetland remains a very important space base for us, and this bill does incorporate all four corners of our great union. We were speaking about the liability regimes where operator liability is limited, and other states provide guarantees to meet all claims or those above the operator's limit of liability, such as the US or France has already been discussed. That is why the Space Industry Act contains powers to limit the amount of spaceflight operators' liability when carrying out spaceflight activities from the UK. And it is government policy that the regulator should use these powers and specify a limit on operator liabilities in the licence. This bill is therefore fully consistent with government policy. And it gives, in answer to the Shadow Minister, it gives the industry the stability and reassurance that this government continues to support them in their endeavours. We've already spoken about skills and training, but if I've not incorporated previous comments in answer to his questions, I'll be happy to write to him or get the department to do so. So therefore, this bill is therefore fully consistent with government policy. Furthermore, this bill improves the Space Industry Act by meeting a key request from industry to provide legislative certainty that spaceflight operators will not face unlimited liability when operated from the UK. And so for these reasons, Mr Deputy Speaker, we are very pleased to support it. Thank you.
I was interested in the Honourable Gentleman's remarks about his childhood dreams to be an astronaut. When I was a child, I recall one Yuri Gagarin circumnavigating the world. I think for 90 minutes. It seems like a very long time ago. Mr. Jonathan Law, to wind up.
With the leave of the House, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would just like to thank all members of this House for attending. For those who attended second reading, I'm pleased that today we had less space-related puns than we did in that second reading debate, although it was a very humorous and beneath the humour, very serious debate that went on for some time and covered all issues. I would also like to thank those members who served on the Bill Committee. I would also like to thank the Clerk of Private Members' Bills, Anne-Marie Griffiths, who has given such good help and advice to myself and other colleagues who have brought forward Private Members' Bills in this session. Mr. Deputy Speaker, our space industry is thriving, but this measure is vital to secure an equally exciting and dynamic future. I'm so pleased that this bill has cross-party support. The Shadow Minister spoke very eloquently about the space cluster that we have in Surrey and the wider South East. One of those companies is Surrey Satellite Technology Limited, just outside my constituency, but many of whose employees live in my constituency, that will benefit. Other firms, large, medium and small, will grow and will grow in the UK and come to the UK if this measure is passed. It was a great honour to see my honourable friend, the first of many times that I'm sure he will speak from that dispatch box. This bill has cross-party support, and to ensure that exciting and dynamic future that I mentioned, I commend this bill to the House.
Question is that the bill be now read a third time. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Again, can I congratulate the honourable gentleman on his successful excursion into space.
Animal Welfare Responsibility for Dog Attacks Bill, second reading.
Now.
Anna Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I beg to move that this bill now be read a second time. It's a huge privilege, having already had the pleasure of guiding my pet abduction bill through the Commons this session, to have the opportunity to debate my other private member's bill, which I first introduced last session. This bill, as the Minister knows, would amend the Animal Welfare Act 2006 to require a person in charge of a dog to take all reasonable steps to ensure that that dog does not fatally injure another dog, and to impose criminal liability if they fail to take reasonable steps and their dog fatally injures another dog. And this is to plug a gap in the Dangerous Dogs Act, which became painfully brought to my attention, which I'll come on to. And before I go any further, though, I would just like to thank the Conservative Animal Welfare Foundation, so ably led by Lorraine and Chris Platt, for all their help in getting this bill as far as we have got today. We all know that we're a nation of dog lovers. There are now some 12 million dogs in the UK. That's more than the populations of Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire combined, and then doubled. That works out to nearly half of all households in the UK now having a dog. And we all know how much loved our dogs are. You only have to look at the excitements at the Westminster Dog of the Year competition to see that. And indeed, as this House well knows, my own Cavapuchon Lottie is a much-loved member of our family. But it's companionship, which is the most common reason for having a dog, and that was absolutely the case for my constituent, Michael. He was one of the first constituents who ever came to see me, and in fact he came to see me even before I became a member of this House, and he was so distressed and in such anguish that I absolutely, it was just a pleasure to take up his cause, because Michael had a friend called Emily who sadly died, and he adopted her beautiful white fluffy Bichon Frise bitch, Millie, both to keep him company but also to help him grieve his friend Emily. However, around 2.5 years ago, Millie was savagely attacked by an off-lead, out-of-control dog while Michael was walking her through the Rose Garden in Chalkwell Park in Leigh-on-Sea. Michael remembers the attack as if it was yesterday. It was like watching a horror movie. He described how the dog came at Millie like a missile, even though Millie was on the lead, and shook her like a rag doll. Poor Michael watched helpless as Millie was quite literally torn apart. And after the attack, the best he could do was carry her to the nearest vet, all the while bleeding and with serious open wounds to her abdomen. To add insult to injury, the owner of the dog that attacked Millie refused to take any responsibility for the attack, refusing even to pay the vet's bill for euthanasia. No owner, Mr. Deputy Speaker, or dog should have to go through what Michael and Millie went through. And Michael is still devastated and scarred by this experience, even to this day. Now, obviously, Michael reported the matter to the police, but he was simply told there was nothing they could do as it was dog on dog and no human had been injured. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you will know that dog-on-dog attacks are becoming ever more commonplace. I'm sure you've seen the extensive reports in the media. You only have to Google dog-on-dog attacks to see a long list of news reports on the matter. Only on the 9th of this month, a couple were featured where their dog was so savagely attacked they were hit with a staggering £23,000 vet bill after the dog's treatment. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this loophole in the Dangerous Dogs Act is unacceptable, which is why I chose to reintroduce this bill during this season. Now, I'm well aware that most presentation bills never make it onto the statute books, so I am pleased to report to this House that as a result of this bill, and as a result of me lobbying the government, DEFRA officials have been working with the Crown Prosecution Service to update their prosecution guidance on dog attacks and attacks on other animals. So that guidance now makes it explicit that a dog-on-dog attack can be prosecuted under Section 3 of the Dangerous Dogs Act 1991. The offence, of course, of a dog being dangerously out of control, which is a good step forward. But the key word there is can. Lots of things can be prosecuted, but they simply aren't. And I remain concerned primarily because there is no exhaustive definition of what a dog being dangerously out of control actually means. So, for example, in those same sentencing guidelines which I've just mentioned, it is written that it does not always follow that if a dog causes injury, the dog was dangerously out of control. So we could have the ludicrous situation where a dog kills another dog and it is not deemed to be dangerously out of control if, for example, an owner of a dangerous dog deliberately sets their dog on a neighbour's dog. So, although this is a step forward, it does not deal with the problem that I am seeking to address. Of course I'll give way.
I am my honourable friend for giving way. She's making a very powerful speech and giving some very upsetting and tragic examples of how dogs can attack other dogs. Does she see the similarities between this and the bill we discussed earlier where dogs have attacked livestock, and agree with me that more needs to be done to make sure the dog's owners behave responsibly?
I thank the honourable member for her point, and it is absolutely right. This is about placing the responsibility on the owners and not criminalising the dog itself, which is exactly why I'm bringing forward this private member's bill. When I first introduced the bill, I was contacted by many dog owners up and down the country with heartbreaking tales about the loss of their treasured dogs, many of whom have recontacted me and are delighted that this is being reintroduced today. If we could deal first with the scale of the problem, the Minister knows that in order to support Michael, I submitted freedom of information requests to all 43 territorial police forces in the UK, asking if they record dog-on-dog attacks as a separate offence, and if so, how many they'd recorded over the last 5 years. Shockingly, only 14 police forces currently record a dog-on-dog attack as a separate incident. In 2016, those 14 reported and recorded a total of 1,700 dog-on-dog attacks. 5 years on, and that number has skyrocketed. In 2021, the same 14 police forces recorded 11,559 dog-on-dog attacks, a 700% increase, with a shocking 2,264 in London alone. Now, the true incidence of dog-on-dog attacks is likely to be even higher, because just because a police force doesn't record a dog-on-dog attack as a separate offence doesn't mean, of course, that they are not happening. Now, in terms of the current legislative framework, laws have been strengthened in recent years to protect the public where a dog presents as a risk to public safety, whether in public or in private. But it remains the case that a dog owner is not automatically liable to any form of criminal prosecution when their dog fatally injures another dog, unless the other dog is a guide, an assistance, or a service dog, or the dog bites a human, or there are grounds for reasonable apprehension that it will injure any person, which sounds good. It's an objective test, but it is not universally applied, and that the proof of that pudding is in exactly what happened with this case, because Michael was asked if he wanted to try and press some sort of prosecution, but he said he did not fear for his own safety, because where you have a larger dog attacking a smaller dog, just as in this case, it was so clear the dog was going for the smaller dog, and Michael did not fear any danger to himself at that point. So the law does not adequately cover this instance, and normal dogs should have, pet dogs should have the same protection as guide, assistance or service dogs, because the loss that is felt to the family is the same, if not more, if they lose their beloved companion.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will, of course, give way.
My honourable friend is making a very eloquent speech, and can I just say that some of the most distressing cases that have come into my inbox over the years have been precisely this, where a precious pet has faced these sorts of circumstances, and I completely agree with my honourable friend that if you can make the law with regard to guide dogs and similar assistance dogs, why not to that precious family pet that means so much to so many families?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, and of course I agree with him completely, which is exactly what this bill, Emily's Law, is seeking to do, to close that loophole and to deal with this as a matter of animal welfare and place the responsibility on the dog owner. It's not about dogs. Dogs have owners. It's the owners should be responsible. So that's why this. Of course, I'll give way.
Sir Paul Beresford.
Listening with some considerable interest. There are a large number of farmers in my area. Some of them are sheep farmers. One of their complaints is that people stray onto their land and take their dogs, and they often let them go. What about the situation where the farmer is bringing in the sheep, he sent his hunt away out, disappears over the brow, unbeknown to him, that dog is attacked, the hunt away, by the stray dog, and the hunt away will probably be bigger than most dogs, and the other dog is killed. Who's to blame?
I'm grateful. I'm very grateful to the honourable member for his intervention. As I said at the beginning, this is about placing a responsibility on a dog owner to take all reasonable steps. And in that instance, it may be that the farmer has taken all reasonable steps, in which case there wouldn't be liability. If he hasn't, then he would potentially be caught by my bill. But if I can, firstly, my bill criminalises fatal dog-on-dog attacks, extending the same protection to pet dogs that already exists for service guide and assistance dogs. Secondly, Emily's law would empower owners to pursue justice if their beloved pet is brutally attacked, whilst not demonising any particular breed or creating unhelpful stereotypes around certain breeds of dogs. As I've said, this is an issue around poor ownership. Thirdly, the bill would encourage responsible dog ownership and animal welfare by placing the responsibility for a fatal dog attack fairly and squarely on the person in charge of the dog and empowering the police to take action, which will have a deterrent effect, thus encouraging more responsible dog ownership. However, it is important to note that the bill also includes a number of defences for good owners who are not to blame if their dog causes a fatality, such as if the dog that caused the fatal injury was responding to provocation from another animal or human, and also if the person who is responsible and also the steps the person who is responsible took to prevent the situation escalating. So the whole point is to keep the onus on owners, but to ensure they are dealt with fairly and not punish a situation which is out of their control. So finally, my bill would ensure that local police forces record dog-on-dog attacks as separate offences, enabling us to finally see the full scale of these offences. So to conclude, this bill is about protecting every single dog across the UK. The vast majority of dog owners are responsible, but for those that aren't, there must be consequences. Passing this bill will make our dogs safer, but it will also make our parks, our streets, our towns and our cities, especially the new city of Southend, safer places for us and our dogs to live, work and visit. And finally, this bill will set yet another signal to the world that we in the UK take animal welfare seriously and make us the international exemplar that we all know we are. And I've left just a little bit of time in which I hope I might be able to hear from the Minister. Thank you.
The question is the bill be now read a second time. It's Matt Rodda.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and may I thank the Honourable Member for Southend West for her work in this very important area of policy. We are a nation of dog lovers, as was said earlier, and people in Britain care deeply about animal welfare. So could I say that we do, of course, support this bill, and I wanted to speak briefly in support of it and also to raise a constituency case which is similar to one that the Honourable Lady mentioned earlier. I found the story of Millie deeply moving, and indeed Michael, the owner, as well, and she is right to describe the attack as being like a horror movie. And I had a similar case in my own constituency in Reading East, where an attack happened in a local park, Sintra Park, and a woman who was walking her own beloved pet dog had that dog savaged by a much larger dog, which was well known in that area of the town. And unfortunately, because it was a dog-on-dog attack, there were no powers available to the local police to tackle this terrible issue. It was absolutely appalling. The little dog which was attacked had to be taken for surgery and is lucky to have survived. So I think her bill is well researched and her points are well made. I would like to seek some clarification from the Minister about the possibility of animals, dogs which are not killed but which are severely injured, being protected by this private member's bill, and I do hope there's some good news on that front as well. So in that spirit, may I offer our support as the official opposition, and I look forward to hearing the Minister's response in more detail on that point and other related matters. And may I thank the member again for her hard work on this important area of policy.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And first of all, of course, I must thank my right honourable friend from Southend West for bringing forward this bill. And she has such a commendable record on animal welfare, actually supporting this government on animal welfare issues, and must congratulate her on her pet abduction success. And I would really like to recognise all other members in this House who are supporting all of those welfare issues that we've discussed. But on this particular issue, the Animal Welfare Responsibility of Dog Attacks Bill that my right honourable friend is bringing today seeks to amend the Animal Welfare Act 2006 to require a person...
Debate to be resumed what day?
Friday the 14th of June.
Friday the 14th of June.